You know that feeling when you're deep into a strategy game, staring at your inventory screen, and it's a total mess? You've got stacks of random loot from side quests, half your slots filled with junk you thought might be useful someday, and suddenly you're out of resources for the one upgrade you actually need. Your base is vulnerable, enemies are closing in, and you're scrambling just to survive the next wave. We've all been there. It's that quiet panic, realizing you're hoarding or poor planning is what's holding you back. What if that same chaos is playing out in your real life finances? Today on The Money Gamer, let's talk about budgeting like inventory management. It's not about strict rules or spreadsheets that feel like a grind. It's about building a stable base, one smart sort at a time, so you can level up without the constant stress. Stick with me, and by the end, you'll see your money in a whole new light, like unlocking a better loadout for the long game. Let's reframe this whole budgeting thing because I think a lot of us approach it the wrong way from the start. Picture this. In a strategy game, if you treat your inventory like an endless backpack, grabbing every shiny item without thinking, you end up overloaded. You can't move fast, you miss out on better loot because there's no space, and eventually you hit a wall where you're forced to dump stuff in a panic. That's how many folks handle money. Paycheck comes in and it's like looting a chest. You spend on wants, you toss in the bills, hope there's enough left for the essentials. But what does this common approach fail? It's not because you're bad at math or lack willpower. It's because we're wired to focus on the immediate rewards, like that quick dopamine hit from a new gadget or a takeout. Psychology calls this present bias. We undervalue future needs for today's comfort. And society doesn't help. Ads and social media are like those tempting merchant NPCs, always pushing upgrades you don't need. So we end up in reactive mode, patching holes instead of building defenses. I've seen this play out with friends. One guy's always chasing the next deal, but his rent's late because he didn't allocate resources up front. It's normal though. This is just a level everyone hits eventually, where the game forces you to rethink your build. The good news? Once you see budgeting as smart inventory management, it stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like strategy. Diving deeper now, let's break this down like we're organizing our base camp before a big campaign. In strategy games, your inventory isn't just storage, it's your lifeline. Resources like wood, gold, or mana that let you craft tools, build structures, and sustain your units. Money works the same. It's not about hoarding every coin, but managing what you have so you can thrive through the ups and downs. Think about your income as the loot you gather from main quests, your jobs, side gigs, whatever. But without a system, it scatters. Bills eat into it, like maintenance costs, unexpected expenses hit like random events, and wants creep in like those impulse buys from a shady vendor. Psychologically, this mess comes from how our brains handle scarcity. Studies show when money feels tight, we tunnel vision on short-term fixes, ignoring the big picture. It's like farming low-level mobs forever because the higher zones seem too risky. Take Alex, a buddy of mine in his late 20s, working retail, rent eating half his check, and every month it's a scramble. He'd grab a cup of coffee on the way to work thinking it's just a small treat, but those add up, like stacking useless potions that clutter his slots. Over time, he's got no buffer for car repairs. Boom! Credit card debt, which is like taking a debuff that drains your resources passively. But here's where most players get stuck. They try budgeting with rigid categories that feel artificial, like forcing a square peg into a round slot. Instead, let's use game mechanics to make it intuitive. Start by categorizing your loot into core types. Essentials, like your base resources, food, shelter, transport, like the wood and stone you need to keep your settlement running. Growth items, saving and investments, akin to rare materials for upgrades. And flex loot, entertainment, dining out, the fun stuff that keeps morale high but shouldn't overflow. The key is balance. In games, you don't dump all your gold into weapons if your armor's weak. Same with money. Diversify so one hit doesn't wipe you out. And behaviorally, this taps into habit formation. Small, repeated actions build momentum, like grinding dailies for steady XP. Weaving in more analogies, imagine debt as cursed items in your inventory. They look appealing at first, that zero interest promo, but they apply stacking penalties, draining your resources over time. Many people carry them because life throws curveballs, medical bills, job loss, family needs. It's not failure, it's just the game's difficulty ramping up. Or consider impulse spending as picking up every glowing object without checking stats. Feels good in the moment, but soon your pack's full and you're dropping valuables just to make room. Real life example, I've chatted with folks who feel that paycheck anxiety where Friday's windfall turns into Monday's regret. It's tied to emotional spending. Stress from work leads to retail therapy, like using a health potion mid-fight when you could have just planned better. But compounding this, time scarcity plays a role. Busy schedules make quick fixes tempting, ignoring how they erode your base. Foreshadowing a bit, the shift comes when you treat your budgeting as proactive sorting, regularly reviewing your inventory to sell junk, stack efficiency, and free up space for what matters. This isn't about perfection. Even pros and games have messy phases. It's about progress, turning chaos into a streamlined system that lets you tackle bigger quests like buying a home or starting a side hustle without constant worry. Now let's hit that turning point, the mindset shift that flips the script from survival scrambling to strategic mastery. It's like that moment in a game when you unlock a better inventory system. Suddenly, auto sorting kicks in, categories expand, and you wonder how you ever played without it. For budgeting, the power up is realizing money isn't the enemy or a scarce drop. It's a tool you control, like managing mana in a spellcaster build. This changes everything because it moves you from reactive to proactive. Instead of waiting for the next loot drop, i.e. a paycheck, you plan your resources flow up front. Psychologically, this builds what experts call financially self-efficacy, that quiet confidence where decisions feel empowered, not overwhelming. Think about it. Many stay stuck because they view budgeting as a restriction, like a debuff limiting your fun. But reframe it as optimization, clearing clutter to make room for epic gear. I felt this shift myself. Early on, I treated money like endless respawns, but once I started tracking flows gently, peace of mind followed. No more late night bill stress. Instead, a sense of control like having a mini map for your finances. This ties back to long-term freedom. Compound growth from savings is your exponential multiplier, turning small habits into big wins without grinding endlessly. Emotionally, it's huge. Less anxiety means better sleep, clearer thinking, even stronger relationships, since money fights often stem from unmanaged resources. And the game twist? It's switching from solo rogue mode, dodging traps alone, to building a fortified base where threats bounce off. But here's the beauty. This isn't about massive overhauls. It's a gradual unlock, starting with awareness. Once you internalize that every dollar is a resource point to allocate wisely, decisions align naturally. You start seeing opportunities like negotiating bills as bartering with NPCs, or cutting waste as vendoring trash loot. The result? A calmer life where finances support your quests instead of derailing them. It's empowering knowing you're not at the mercy of the RNG. You're the strategist calling the shots. So with that shift in mind, let's talk practical next moves, like tweaking your build without resetting the whole game. Start small. Take a quiet evening, like a strategy session before bed, and list your incoming loot, or your income, versus your outflows, your expenses, for the past month. No fancy apps needed, notebook works, just like sketching a base layout on paper. Identify the junk, those subscriptions you forgot, daily snacks adding up, the coffee shop stops, and vendor them gently, maybe one or two out of a time. Many find success with the 50-30-20 rule as a starting template. That's 50% on essentials, 30% on flex or wants, and 20% on growth. But adjust it to your playstyle. If rent's high, shift percentages without stress. Next, set up auto transfers for savings, like automating resource gathering in a game, so it happens before you can spend it. Build an emergency fund as your shield slot, and aim for 3 to 6 months essentials, stashing a bit in each cycle. For tracking, think weekly check-ins, not daily micromanaging. Review your inventory to avoid overload. If debt's in play, prioritize high-interest ones, like targeting debuff sources first. And remember, progress over perfection. If you slip, it's just a minor setback, not game over. Frame it as experimenting with loadouts. Try envelope methods for cash spending or apps that gamify it subtly. The low-pressure key: celebrate quiet wins, like freeing up $50 for something meaningful. This builds habits without burnout, turning budgeting into a background mechanic that runs smoothly. I hope you felt a bit of that calm settling in, like sorting your inventory and realizing your base is stronger than you thought. Money struggles are universal. We've all hit those walls where it feels like the game is stacked against us. But treating budgeting as smart resource management, it empowers you to play on your terms, building stability that leads to real freedom. You're not alone in this quest, and small strategic tweaks can change the trajectory. Drop a comment below. What's your current money inventory challenge or a game analogy that's clicked for you? Remember, the game's long term. Pace yourself and you'll level up steadily. Thanks for joining me on Money Gamer. Until next time, keep strategizing smart.